Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the November My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. The November kit had just so many papers and embellishments from this gorgeous Simple Stories Christmas collection. The composition of this layout is very simple. It's one of my go-to designs. I'm going to have a strip of pattern paper going down the center and then different pattern paper on either side of that center strip. Even though the design is simple, with some punches and with the embellishments in the kit, I think that it turned out to be a pretty festive looking layout. I'm attaching down the paper that's going to go on either side of the strip right now. It's a beautiful poinsettia paper. I just absolutely loved it, and I cut out the center so I could use that piece of paper on another layout. I absolutely love using punches. I know that they kind of went out of style for a while, but I always held on to my punches because I really like the different effects you can create with just one punch. This punch that I'm using here is one of my favorite punches. It's made by EK Success, and I love the way there's a doily look to each of those scalloped sections. I'm also using a Martha Stewart punch. I'm going to pair these two borders and layer the green one on top of the larger white border. Earlier I was working with that white border. I wanted to make both of the borders longer than 12 inches. That way I could then center the scallops and then cut them exactly where I wanted them to. If I just left them 12 inches, I found that one of the sides always looked like it had a larger portion of the scallop than the other. I hope that this is making sense. I'll point out how extending that strip helped me when I attached down the scallop. I used some Distress Oxides to ink the edges of some of the papers. For those green border strips, I used pine needles, and for this red center strip, I used the lumberjack plaid color. I put some ATG adhesive along the back of that strip of red paper, and then I attached it down to that green border strip. I thought that this smaller, more delicate border would be a nice contrast with the larger white scallop. Here you could see how I can position the paper so that the partial scallop on both sides will be the same size. Now I'm trimming off those excess pieces. In this video, I'm not working in my regular space. I went to a weekend crop. I'm so glad that I did because I had a little bit of scrapper's block going on, and I think it really helped me to be immersed in scrapbooking all weekend. It also helped me to use a design that I was familiar with, and it didn't hurt that I absolutely loved all of these papers and embellishments. And it's a very simple composition that I have here, but I think that because all of the pattern papers are so beautiful and there's so much pattern that the layout turned out okay in the end. Here I'm putting the layout on my trimmer, but I'm not cutting anything. I just want to make sure that everything is straight. When I'm at home, my trimmer is off camera, so I don't show that, but I do find it to be very useful just to double check, make sure that things that I want to be at a 90-degree angle are actually at a 90-degree angle. The trimmer that I use is a Fisker's rotary trimmer. I find that people either really like this particular trimmer or really aren't a fan of it, and I'm just one of those people who likes it very much. I have one downstairs in my house, one upstairs, and I actually have a couple of spares that I have put aside because I was able to find them at very good prices. So I am all set on trimmers going into the future. This is the first type of trimmer that I used as a scrapbooker, and I've stuck with it ever since. I added some strips of striped paper to that centerpiece. I wanted to add a little bit more detail to it, a little bit more interest. And now I'm adding my photo to the center. I matted it on some white paper and then again on some black paper. I'm cutting into this journaling card and I'm going to layer the pieces that I cut off of it behind the photo. I wanted to extend the mat a little bit and then add a little bit more interest behind the photo. I cut out two L-shaped pieces, and then I'm going to use the rest of the card for the top and the bottom of the photo. I used my trimmer and I straightened out all of the edges. I'm going to cut it in half, and then half will go at the very top of the photo and the other half will go at the bottom. Before I attach the pieces down though, I'm going to distress the edges. At first I was going to ink all the edges, then I thought better to distress them first and then ink them second. I didn't bring my distressing tool with me, and I don't have a pair of scissors that I am not worried about dulling the blades of, so I'm using the back of the scissors to help to distress all of these edges. And then once they're all distressed, I go back to the distress ink in black soot and I ink all of the edges of these papers. Now I'm going to assemble all of the pieces. I add some ATG adhesive to the back of the photo, and then I start positioning each of the papers on the back of the photo. I start with those two large L's, and then I add those two pieces that I cut out from the leftover scrap. I love that this Christmas collection includes black as one of the primary colors. I think that it goes so well with the greens and the reds of a traditional Christmas palette. I thought that I would use the black around the photo because I think that having that dark color around the photo really helps it to stand out. I put a thick piece of white cardstock on the back of the photo because I thought I was going to pop it up on some foam, and then I realized that I had forgotten to bring foam on my weekend retreat. Without any foam or chipboard, I couldn't pop it up. I could have waited until I got home, but I thought that it looked just fine, and I decided that I didn't mind it attached directly down to the pattern paper. One thing I did want to do though was add another strip of black paper to either side. I didn't like the way there was just a little teeny tiny thin area of red on either side. If it was a little bit bigger, I wouldn't have minded, but I thought it would look better if the black paper went up to the edge of the striped paper that's on either side. And the reason that I put cardstock behind the photo when I pop it up is that I think it makes it a little bit more sturdy, and it will keep the photo from bending when I put it into the page protectors. Because I have learned from experience that things that are popped up on foam have to be well supported and reinforced. I find that sometimes the photo or whatever is popped up on foam can bend down around the foam in time. So I always like to keep that in mind and make sure everything that I pop up on foam is reinforced. I'm beginning to add some embellishments to the layout now. I added some photo corners. I used an EK Success scalloped photo corner punch and some of the pattern paper that was in the kit. I inked the edges with the black soot distress ink, and then I also added a little tab that says "A Golden Moment." Now I'm adding my title, which is Believe. You may have noticed that I reinforced it with some white cardstock, and I did have some foam. Thank you to my friend Sue. Sue gave me these very deluxe foam squares. I'm used to just using the fun foam, but these were great. They were a little bit thicker, and they had a tab on both sides that you could pull off, and made it very easy to use these. I have to consider adding these to my stash. To embellish the title, I added some gold stars all around it. You can see that I'm inking everything that I put on the page with that black soot distress ink. Underneath Believe, I'm adding a sentiment that says Simply Magical. I again use those cool tabs to mount that down to the layout. I absolutely love to use branches and florals on my layouts, and I usually run out of them pretty quickly. This month I made 6 layouts, and I still didn't use up all of the holly branches and all of the floral pieces that were in this month's kit. There were just so many of them, and I absolutely love that because I think that you can add lots of them to a layout, and I often do. So on top of the photo, I wanted to use 2 branches. I'm once again using the tabs, and I'm popping up just one of the branches to give that cluster a dimensional look. Then I thought it would be nice to accent the title with some holly leaves as well. So I picked a very small die cut and I placed it between the title and the small sentiment. I thought that it would make sense to have some branches down there too, and also bring some green to that cluster. One of my favorite embellishments to add to Christmas layouts is pine tree branches. Normally when I cut out die cuts like this, I use them all up, but I guess I really wanted to make quite a stash of them because I have quite a few that I had tucked away from last year's Christmas layouts, and they came in really handy this year. I had them cut out of some shiny green paper and then another more matte green paper. I added a number of them over and around the holly leaves at the top, and then I also added a few to the bottom title cluster. As I was looking at the layout, I started to think that as much as I love those white scalloped strips, they were very large and I wanted to break them up a little bit. I still wanted to have a neutral color, and I found that one of the pattern papers had this nice tan color, so I thought this would be perfect to add to each of those scallops. I used my Creative Memories circle cutter and I cut out a number of small circles. I inked the edges, then I cut the circles in half and I tucked the half circle into each one of those scallops, and I think that this helps to take away from that large area of white that was really drawing my eye. Just to break up all of the holly leaves, I added a die cut to the left-hand side of that cluster. It's a heart-shaped button with a bow in the center. I popped that up on some foam to give that a little bit of dimension, and then I continued to play around with those pine branches. Once I had everything where I wanted it, I used some Aleene's gel glue and I attached all of those die cuts down to the layout. It wouldn't be a Christmas layout without a little bit of bling. I've had these jewels in my stash for a while. They're not faceted, they're almost like enamel dots, but they have the appearance of a jewel, if that makes sense. So I added some red jewels to each of the photo corners, and then I was putting some tinier red jewels into the larger clusters, and then I changed my mind and I decided that instead of having tiny red jewels, I would put some tiny clear jewels, and I liked the way that looked a little bit better. I did miss one little red jewel to the left of the sentiment at the bottom of the layout, but I don't think it's super noticeable. Then when I got home from the crop, I added a bow to the center of the star next to the title. You'll see that in the final layout. This layout is now complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so very much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch it. And I want to thank everybody for all of your views, all of your likes, and all of your kind comments. They really, really do make my day. Thank you so much. If you are considering purchasing a kit, I hope you will check out the My Creative Scrapbook website. The link is in the description box. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.